Hello, I'm Pastor Bill Hennessy, and I am the pastor at North Presbyterian Church in Williamsville, New York. I'm offering a daily Bible study based on the daily lectionary readings. During this time of quarantine, as we continue to be separated from one another, this is being done in my basement. So I know a lot of you are at home as well. And the passages that I'm using come from the PCUSA website, pcusa.org. You can go there and search for the daily lectionary readings, and you can find the page that I use. So I'm looking today at the gospel reading for this, Thursday, I guess, May 7th. And it is from Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 to 26. You have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, "You shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment." But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, "You fool," you will be liable to the hell of fire. So when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are on the way to court with him, or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. So that's, again, from chapter 5, Matthew. And this is a section in Matthew's Gospel known as the Sermon on the Mount. Began with the Beatitudes, which we looked at a couple of days ago, and continued through some other material. And now it sort of begins this section where Jesus lifts up a point in the law that can be found in the Torah and reinterprets it usually in a more sort of, fundamental way. So it's not just that you kill somebody, but you can't even be angry with someone. And you know, we look at that and wonder, what kind of a standard could that possibly be? Who could live up to that kind of a standard? And, Jesus had a way of sort of peeling back the meaning of the law rather than just a sort of simplistic application of it that's sort of on a literal, sort of superficial level. He would peel back the law to get at its more sort of fundamental purpose. Sort of what one professor I had in seminary would call sort of brushing back the grain to get at the deeper meaning of the law. And the law in Jewish tradition is more than just a set of regulations and rules. We often think of it that way, but it's not static in that sense. The law is it's Torah, and Torah doesn't just mean law. It also means path. It is a way of living. And Jesus is calling his listeners back to their roots, back to a deeper expression of their life together. So when he talks about law in Matthew's Gospel, he's really, I think, trying to instill in his listeners a deeper appreciation for it. He's not trying to, I think, create sort of impossible standards and driving them away from trying to live this way. I think what he wants to do is help them get in touch with the more spiritual, more transformative effect of the law, to encourage them to live in an entirely new way that goes beyond just the facade, just the superficial interactions that we so often experience. And it sounds, there's hyperbole involved in that, and so this sort of but this progression, if you're going to give your gift at the altar, you should go with a clean sort of conscience or a clean slate. You shouldn't go while you're also harboring ill feelings toward others. And you need to sort those things out before you bring yourself to present yourself before God. I think that is it's a way of living that means we have to be intentional about what we do when we worship, and what is going on inside of us. We're not just going through the motions as if this is sort of a mechanistic faith that we practice. We're meant to be transformed through our life together. But that can only come if we're willing to open ourselves up to interactions that are challenging and that ask something deep of us. So rather than allowing ourselves to just sort of harbor a grudge toward another person, we need to sort that out. We need to face it. We need to, relieve ourselves of it somehow. And the only way to do that is to be in relationship with the other. And, one thing about Jesus' teachings that that is emphasized over and over is we are always called to engage, to be in relationship with the other. And to do that in a way that is transformative for us and for them, that sort of makes the relationship something deeper. And I think that's rooted in Jewish ethic. When you look at Torah, or when you look at the prophets, they're always sort of calling the people to a deeper connection to one another, a connection that in some way reflects their deep connection as a people to God and God's deep connection to them. In the same way, Jesus is saying that should inform our personal relationships. It shouldn't be something that's just reserved for ritual, but it's how we live our daily lives. And so if we harbor these feelings of anger and resentment toward others, then how are we able to serve God joyfully? How are we able to be in a relationship with God that is transformative for us, that helps us get in touch with that deep sense of goodness in creation, if we're full of anger and resentment? It's a challenging thing because I think a lot of folks nurse their grudges. They kind of hang on to them. I've met many people over the years who have had long-standing alienation with from estrangement, rather, from sisters or from brothers or from parents, and it's a very sad situation, and I think it sort of eats away at us when we carry that kind of a burden. And Jesus is inviting folks to relieve themselves of that burden, to find ways to reach out to those around them with compassion, with forgiveness, with a sense of humility. Because what is it that keeps us sort of entrenched in those feelings? Usually, I think it's pride. I think it's ego. And what Jesus is calling us away from is ego, to let go of self-absorption and allow ourselves to be vulnerable and to experience God's presence in a new way. So as we go for the next few days looking at this section of Matthew's Gospel, I encourage you to maybe look at that as a whole unit and not just bits and pieces, because you can see in that Jesus is now going to sort of lay out a new understanding of Torah for the people. And I'm sure I mentioned this a while back in other sessions, but Jesus is not interested in creating a new religion. Jesus wants to see the religion that he practices, Judaism, become more authentic, become more reflection of its intention. And so to really sort of dig deeply into Torah and to experience the transformative power that Torah offers. He wants to reform his faith and help folks around him to have a deeper relationship with their God. We often forget that. We often assume that Jesus is providing some kind of alternative to Judaism, as if he were suggesting that it be overthrown, that it be discarded. I don't think that's at all the case. All the Gospels, but especially the three synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, describe a person who is in love with his tradition. So much so that he wants it to be the basis for all of life and encourage others to experience it that way. Of course, as we look at this from our vantage point, we are in a different place, and we've built our religion around his teachings, but often without understanding the tradition from which he emerged. part of our challenge as Christians today is to, I think, begin to recognize our connection to Judaism and our reliance on it, and what we have to learn from Judaism so that we can appreciate it more deeply. Now, I've said before, and I'm thoroughly convinced that anti-Semitism is the original sin of the church. For whatever reason, as the church kind of gained in power in Roman society, it began to see Judaism as somehow an enemy. And that's held for 2,000 years, that attitude. And we see it expressed today over and over. And yet we owe so much to Judaism. We owe so much to that wisdom. We should learn from it. We should allow it to inform us so that we can grow more deeply in our relationship to God, as Jesus, I think, is encouraging the people around him to be better at Torah, to be better Jews than they've been, perhaps, calling them to deepen their relationship to one another, their relationship to God. So I leave you with that today, and I hope that you're having a good day, and you are well and safe, and I look forward to sharing with you again very soon. Be well.